All right, so today we're going to be talking about the upcoming ship coming to World of Warships, well, the experimental ones, the Varese. So if you guys know about the previous experimental ships, the Oregon, the Vyasma, and the Mets, the Varese is the tier 10 of the new experimental ships that are going to be coming in World of Warships in the upcoming patch in June. And so this ship is pretty much, this experimental line is about secondaries. So as you can see, the Varese is pretty much a Michelangelo at tier 10. And what it has the fight or flight like the previous experimental ships, but instead of it being for main guns and reload and accuracy, this is for its secondaries. So when the ship is at full health, it doesn't get any of the bonuses to its secondaries, but when it goes down to its lowest minimum HP threshold, which is 21,000, it has a maximum buff of 20% base secondary battery firing range and a 30% reload buff to the secondaries, which is a very interesting gimmick for the Varese. So the Varese, like being said, it was originally the Michelangelo. It doesn't come with the smoke. It comes with a Hydro or DFAA. It comes with a heavy repair team heal, which can heal over 47,000 health, which is a lot of health. And you do get 3 of them when you build into it. And you get a damage control party as well. The ship has the same guns as the Michelangelo. It has the same secondaries. Nothing really has changed amongst that. So the secondaries are SAP, which is extremely strong against cruisers, battleships, destroyers, you name it. They do a lot of damage to them. And with the fighter flight skill all the way active, would you know what the longest range is for an SAT? Because I know base, the secondaries are 12.5, but with the range all the way up, I think it goes to like 15 something, correct?
I believe 15 is what I calculated earlier.
Okay, so they're extremely long range secondaries for the Varese. Pretty insane. Now, this ship originally, when it was first being put and tested, had over 100,000 HP, which a lot of people were memeing about the fact that this thing was a tier 10 cruiser with 100,000 HP. Now, since then, it's done some balancing work, and this ship has been brought down to 85,700, and that is with the Charlie Kilo signal to be able to get the HP. Without it, it goes down to 81,000. And during this testing phase on the public test server, the ship, at this point, it feels like it can do damage, right? It can do damage, but the problem is that it feels like it isn't able to tank very well because it's a cruiser. And the reason why is that cruisers don't have access to fire prevention, so it's really easy to get 4 fires on this ship. Really easy. And even though you do get access to a long duration heal that heals 1,000 HP per second for 45 seconds, you're not able to heal all the damage back. And I'll let SAT score explain it a little bit better.
So the way that the Varese's heal works is it's a standard heal, but it heals for a lot longer. Unfortunately, it does not increase the rate of healing. And the penalty is that the repair party actually takes longer to cool down.
Yep.
Normal cooldown is 80 seconds for reference. Varese is 120, so that's a 50% increase. And also, when you get to low health, like it takes longer to reach the optimal threshold to maximize the amount of heal you get. And unfortunately, in a hull that's not very durable like the Varese, if you go down to low health, say like 20k or so, that's very uncomfortable. So you're more likely to just heal up early, even though you're not going to get the full benefit, just simply because if you die, you don't get any benefit of healing. So, yeah. So in practice, while you can heal over 100% of your HP, unless a lot of that is fires, then you're probably not going to get very efficient use out of after your first heal. And unlike the Michelangelo, which is the base cruiser, you don't get a smoke to kind of cover you between the repair parties. Is that correct? You still don't get smoke, right?
No, no smoke, which is the biggest downside for the Varese. It doesn't get the Michelangelo smoke that allows it to enter a fight and then leave, which is the biggest thing. Because Michelangelo, if it didn't have the smoke, it wouldn't be very good, right? And this is kind of the same with the Varese, where it can enter a fight, but because of how big the ship is and how large that citadel is, if you try to disengage and leave the fight, you're more than likely going to get dev struck. Even though if you have all that HP, you're going to get dev struck on the way out. You have to be very careful when you are actually turning out. Now, this ship does have decent concealment. It has a 12.2 concealment with a secondary range of 12.5. So technically, when you get spotted, you're able to use your secondaries as long as you're able to spot the target. But like Asadeswar said, you don't get smoke. So it's kind of like you can't really disengage as much. And the secondary angles are also kind of poor on the ship. So you have to show a lot of side to get a lot of effectiveness out of your secondaries, which can be quite painful. For the, you do get okay-ish anti-air as well, and you do get airstrikes, which is really nice as well. The torpedoes on this thing are actually monstrous torpedoes. The damage is very similar to Japanese torpedoes. They do 24,000 damage, and they have about a 2-minute reload, but you get 3 per side, and that can devastate cruisers, battleships, you name it. They do a lot of damage to them when you're doing drive-bys, so they'll absolutely destroy them for sure. What are your thoughts on the Varese overall? Like, do you think SAT?
So, based on your experience, especially, like, yeah, people were memeing on it when it had 100k HP, but losing literally 30% of that HP apparently did not do well for the Varese.
No.
Like, she may sound pretty nice, pretty powerful, but the repair party is not as good as advertised. And her hull is, well, it still uses the Michelangelo hull. And without the smoke to cover its weakness, in practice it sounds like it's not as powerful as people initially believed it to be.
Yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. So this ship will be entering the patch in June. So sometime in June, so pretty soon. And it'll be available until 14.8, which should be in like September, I believe. That's how long it will be. So it'll be around for a while.
Yeah, of course, this is really just our opinion. You can always go play the ship for yourself on a PTS if you want to see how good she is,
Yep.
or not.
Now, so overall, at this state, I don't really think the Varese is a great ship overall. I'd rather just play the Michelangelo at that point. Now, before you guys click off the video like, oh, well, we already know the review, right? There is another ship. Now, there's 3 ships being added, and the tier 9 is actually really good. The tier 9 is the Hotaka. It's the tier, it's pretty much the secondary equivalent of the Adatara of the bungalow line for the Japanese. Now this ship has good guns. The guns are really good on the ship. They have 8 410mm guns with a nice reload. And the secondaries are fast firing, about 2.4 seconds, 6.7 seconds for the different secondaries. And they have you're supposed to build into IFHE onto these secondaries because of how fast they fire. And it gets up to 37mm. So it's that sweet spot above 32, which is really nice. So if you have bow-in sitting ships or cutting away from you, you're able to pin that and just do a lot of raw damage with the secondaries. The concealment's also good on the ship too, with 13.5 kilometers. It's also very maneuverable, going 31.5 knots, and has an 880 meter turning radius, which is pretty tight for a battleship. But it has the same gimmick of the Varese with the fighter flight where it has, well, this ship starts at 74,700 HP, and then the minimum threshold is to 18,000 to get that 20% range and 30% buff to the secondaries. The secondary range base is 12.1 kilometers, which is really good for the Tier 9 battleship. It does really well. And you do get a lot more bang for your buck with this ship than compared to the Varese, like tier for tier wise. It's kind of like the Vyasma of the other experimental ships. This is kind of like that, but instead of that ship being a battleship turned to a cruiser, this is just a battleship that just turned from a sniping battleship to a fun, brawling secondary battleship. It has really good armor on the ship as well, good survivability, overall better gun angles than the Varese for getting shots out, as well as the secondaries. The secondaries have better angles as well, so it's a lot more, it's easier to manage your pushes in or angling to get all of your secondaries off. You don't have to show your full side. And it's also a battleship as well, so you're able to build into fire prevention, which is really important so that you're not just going to get farmed out by fires. And I think that's like the main thing that's missing from the Varese is the fact that it's not a battleship, it's a cruiser. So it misses out on that, one, longer damage control party time, and two, it misses out on fire prevention. So you're able to have that on the Hotaka, which allows you to tank more and last longer to be able to get that heal back up sooner, because it does have the similar heal to the Varese, which has the heavy repair teams. You get 3 max when you build into it. You technically get 4 if you build into the improved repair parties, which I do recommend. So you can get up to 4. So you can get your heal back quicker. It's not really getting an extra heal. It's more like you're able to reduce that cooldown the more you tank, so you're able to get that heal back quicker. Because the heal cooldown is almost 2 minutes. It's a very long cooldown. So that improved heal skill will really help you get your heal back quicker to be able to be able to tank longer. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the Hotaka? Like overall, I think it's way better than the tier 10, and it's way easier to get. Pretty much how to get these ships is in the upcoming June patch. It's going to be the same way as the Oregon, where you just do missions and you get action points, which you use to buy modules of the ship to complete it, and you complete it with free XP. And once you do that, you then can move on to the next ship. So the Hotaka is the second ship in that experimental area, so it's easier to get than the Varese. If you want to buy the ship, I think like in total, like I know the Oregon cost 10,000 alone, and I think the Hotaka was like 7,500, and then the Mets was 5,000. So if you want to spend that, sure, it's up to you. But you can also get the ship for free by just playing the game. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the Hotaka? I know I kind of just spieled over, but what are your thoughts on it?
The on-paper stats of the Hotaka are pretty interesting. So she is a proper battleship, so you get that survivability. But the secondary itself, it's actually not as strong as the Varese or the other ship we're going to talk about here. Like, the on-paper stats are, for her secondaries, is not as good. Dispersion is worse. The dispersion is worse, but you do get that 30mm pen, and then you can take IFHE for even better pen.
Yep.
So it sounds like maybe Hotaka is supposed to be a more balanced version. Like, Varese is supposed to be more in firepower, but Hotaka just has that survivability to let her use that secondary for longer.
Yep.
Not to mention you get those fires as well. And that apparently is translating into a better experience for you, because you think Hotaka is much stronger than the Varese.
I do 100%. It's mainly just due to the Varese being farmed out way easier than compared to the Hotaka, and it's mainly due to the fact of the fire prevention. Like the Varese, you just have to pray you don't get set on fires, because with how much HP that ship has, you're gonna get burned out really easily, which is the main problem of the ship. And since it has cruiser armor and it isn't really buffed at all compared to Michelangelo, and the Michelangelo's whole gimmick is that exhaust smoke, which it doesn't get. So it's just out in the open, way easier to get farmed and targeted route. The Michelangelo could easily turn out in the smoke or use the smoke to push in and then leave. The Varese has to use its HP as the bulk of its ability to get in and out of a fight successfully. And also the fact that the ship is so long, it has such an exposed citadel that a lot of the time when you're trying to leave, you're just going to get death struck. So you do have to be aware of that. But for the Hotaka, you get to build into fire prevention, and you also get to build into the improved heal, which is really nice. While you can't do that with the Varese. So with the Varese, you can't build into getting that heal back quicker, but you can with the Hotaka. So I'm overall just more biased with the Hotaka overall. I'm more biased with it than compared to the Varese.
You basically have a more positive experience with the Hotaka.
Yeah, exactly. I have a way better experience. Way more positive.
All right, that leaves one final ship we need to talk about then.
Yep, so the final ship we'll be talking about is going to be the Protector. So I know this video is meant to be a review on the Varese, but we kind of just wanted to talk about all three just to get into the video anyway, because we already talked about the Varese, so might as well talk about all three, right? So the Protector is the Congress turned into a secondary ship, right? So turned into Protector. So it has
Brawling Congress.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's a brawling Congress. So it has the same guns as the Congress, slightly longer reload, 24 seconds. Yeah, a little bit longer. Yeah. Secondaries are 2.5 second reloads with 127 millimeters for the guns. They don't have a lot of pen. They're 21 millimeters, so I wouldn't recommend building the IFHE. They're definitely more fire starters. And the positions of the secondaries really do make them more of a, like, you're not even though this has the same gimmick as the Varese and the Hotaka with the fight or flight, this ship just doesn't feel as good. Like, for a tier rate, it does fine, right? It's a Congress, a brawling Congress. You don't get the exact same range bonus. It's only 16% max instead of the 20%. And you get that 30% max reload for the secondaries, right? The secondaries feel more like a positive addition to the ship rather than being its full gimmick. The secondaries do have a nice range for a tier rate, being 11.6 kilometers on a tier 6 cruiser. Sorry, tier 8 cruiser. Tier 8. 11.6 kilometers on a tier 8 cruiser is really strong. That's the strongest out of a tier 8 ship. That is the longest secondary range. So you'll outrange any battleship secondaries that are tier 8 or any other ship at that tier. It's a really good secondary range. It feels like you're supposed to use AP on the main guns and you let the secondary start fires, and when you push in, it allows you to kind of use your Hydra to kind of rush destroyers as well. You do get that heavy repair part teams as well, with the 45-second action time. It does have 690 heal per second, which is a lot, but it does have that really long cooldown. So you could use that to push in and maybe get out of a situation, depending upon who you're fighting. But overall, I had a fun experience with the Protector. I feel like if you're in a tier 8 match, it can do good. But if you go into tier 9 or 10, no, you're not going to have a fun time. But if you're fighting tier 8s, you're going to have a really good time. If this thing gets into a tier 7 or 6 match, it's just going to club the crap out of them. It's going to have a ball doing it. But overall... oh, sorry, keep going.
So basically, you're thinking it's a matchmaker-dependent ship.
Yeah, it's a lot more matchmaker-dependent than compared to the Hotaka and the Varese.
All right. Yeah, tier 8 ships sometimes are like that. Like, they'll do really well when they're battling lower tier ships, but once you face the big boys, it's like, oh crap, I'm dead.
Yeah, it's quite an experience for sure with matchmaking. But yeah, with the ship though, overall, I had a more positive experience with it than I did with the Varese. I think I just have a really bad bias against the Varese. Like, I've tried playing it for a few days, and it's just consistently like the same kind of matches. You try to push in, you try to get out, and when you're even though you get out and you don't get dev struck, or I didn't, you just get farmed, and you're not able to survive long enough to get that second heal up. So you have to like either play really passive and not even get to use your secondaries, or you have to just go all in and hope you kill the target before they kill you. Because the Varese's secondaries are sap, and they do a lot of damage. They do. The ship overall is a DPM farming machine, but it's like a DPM farming machine, but also a glass cannon, where you have that DPM, but you're gonna get farmed out really quick. So you have to activate the heal to make sure you last long enough, and then you'll last long enough until you either kill your target or you get killed. And that's how the ship works for the Varese. Hotaka, way better positive experience out of the ship, and the Protector, I had a lot of fun playing it as well. So I'm excited to see how these ships do when they're entered into the June patch. But let me know what you guys think in the comments of your experience with these ships on the public test server. And SAT Squared, do you want to add anything else about any 3 of the ships you think I missed?
So we know from the first batch of experimental ships, it seems that not a lot of people really liked them. I'm wondering if that opinion will change with this batch of experimental ships. I mean, they may be under the same label, but the mechanics for them are quite different.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's just, I feel like they're a little bit more simpler to use. It's just that when you go lower, you just get stronger secondaries. And they don't come with the burst fire ability like the first set. So I wonder if that might make a more well received as opposed to the first batch.
Yeah, because the first batch, the Viasma, is what people really hated, because it was everyone didn't understand why they made a tier 8 battleship into a tier 9 cruiser. It never made sense in that regard. I'm like, why? Because the reason why is because you're taking a battleship, you're giving it a massive buff, and then you're putting it into a cruiser slot. So essentially you're putting a really strong battleship into a cruiser slot, where you're pretty much giving the enemy team or your team additional battleship, which doesn't really seem fair, right? And that's really prevalent in ranked and in brawls. When you're dealing with smaller teams, it's really prevalent when they have that HP advantage of like a Viasma and its powerful guns that can dev strike cruisers and battleships alike, because they're battleship guns and they're not cruiser guns.
What sent it over the top, in my opinion, is that all 3 ships have burst fire. Varese just absolutely abuses that burst fire whenever it's in a match. Like you can go up to ranked, you can just fire off all five salvos easy. Like even if you're not very good and you die in the first couple minutes, if you're just getting close, you can just fire off all five of these bursts and just have absurdly more impact than you normally would in any other ship, and it's completely unfair for the enemy.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, and I think that's why people did not like the Oregon experimental ships at all. I feel like this will probably be more received because it feels more balanced. So I think we'll just have to see. But overall, what is your opinion so far of these 3 new secondary brawlers?
If I were to have to choose between the first batch and the second batch, at this point I will probably prefer the second batch, just because it's a lot easier to deal with. Like, yeah, it's secondary based, but if you can deal with the Sleefin and the Libertad, you can probably deal with those ships as well. Like, the gimmick is pretty interesting, but it also does mean you have to be aggressive with your ship in order to get the most out of your gimmick, which I think is a positive addition for high tiers, because the infamously passive high tier meta really like Wargame is trying ways to get the passive meta to be more aggressive, and this is probably one way to do it.
Yep, 100%.
At least they're trying.
Yeah, they're trying. They're trying to make the meta more aggressive, so I can see that for sure. But anyway, that is going to be it for today's video. Make sure you guys leave a like, comment, and subscribe down below. But I will see you guys in the next video, and I will talk to you all later.